A random woman or man. You wouldn't know who they are. It's hypothetical. Story 1. Depends on the amount of work required to obtain food, water, and shelter. On average, men may be more physically adapted for hunting, while women tend to consume fewer resources. Story 2. I remember the Dutch Robinson expedition series, where men and women were trapped on separate islands and had to fend for themselves. Based on this, I would choose a random man, as I believe we would have the best chance of building a functioning system. Men are skilled at building and maintaining infrastructure, and in a survival situation, that is what I would prioritize. Story 3. I prefer to deal with a woman who has lost her mind rather than a man, primarily because I expect the other person to break down. Story 4. I don't care. The potential risk is the same for both. I just need them to be knowledgeable and a team player. Story 5. A man. Did you see the Survivor session where they separated men and women into their own tribes? If I remember correctly, the men had shelter, fire, food, and water before the end of the first day. The women had to be given food. They got lost on the island multiple times and couldn't start a fire. It was a disaster. Story 6. It depends. Are we stuck on an island in the Caribbean for a weekend with no rum? Or are we stranded on an island off the coast of Svalbard with a howling north wind and ice all around us? Story 7. I choose whoever is most likely to help me escape the island. However, if we are stuck there forever, I guess a woman. I have had more close female friends than male friends for whatever reason, so I believe that's a safe choice. Story 8. I will choose a random woman because there is a higher likelihood of her speaking English than a man. If it's truly random, I am likely to end up with a man from India who does not speak English at all. I believe our best chance to escape the island is through cooperation and communication. It would be unfortunate if I picked based on that logic and ended up with a woman who only speaks Mandarin. The language barrier is a significant problem regardless of the person's gender. How can you arrive at any sort of conclusion about the best course of action beyond food and shelter if you cannot communicate? What if they want to build a raft and sail away, and they know exactly how to do it? They might be able to return us to civilization, but if they cannot communicate to me how to build a raft or how to sail, I would be at a loss. Slowly, resentment would grow. They would watch with anger as I used resources to reinforce the shelter in hopes of rescue, and I would respond with disdain as they used our precious resources to build a useless raft. I would think, surely they will perish at sea. They might think, surely he will die waiting to be rescued. Then simultaneously we both think, if they died now, I would have all the resources and a much better chance of making it out alive. No one would know. We would both rush at each other with rocks and strike each other on the head. We would both collapse to the ground and die. 10 minutes later, a rescue team arrives and surveys the scene. Well, it looks like if only they had the all-new Time Kettle M3 language translator earbuds, they could have avoided this whole situation. The camera pulls back into a blur, transitioning the scene. The rescue team leader remains in his gear, holding up the translator earbuds with a big smile on his face. Team leader, new from Time Kettle, the M3 language translator earbuds. With a 25-hour battery life and offline translation available, these earbuds could have spared them their tragic fate by simply allowing them to converse. Don't get trapped on a random island with someone you can't speak to. Get yourself a pair of M3 language translator earbuds today. The scene fades to black, followed by silence. After a moment, a bright blue screen appears with dark green text that reads, Time Kettle is a division of Nakamura Heavy Industries. Story 9. A woman. I am pretty self-sufficient. I would do fairly well on my own, but since I need company, a woman is a much smaller problem in the event that she tries to hurt me. Story 10. It depends on the circumstances. Are we hunting for food and building shelter? I would probably choose the man. He is likely more experienced with building and hunting than I am. Do we have sufficient resources, no relative dangers, and the necessary tools to survive? I would probably choose the woman since she requires less food to survive, allowing us to stretch our resources further. Story 11. I identify as a woman for one reason. I was raised by my mother and grandmother. There was never a man in my life. Chances are I get along better with women. Even if someone is difficult, reality will eventually reveal the truth. If we disagree on something, she won't harm me. I may still need to be cautious, though. I also hope that island has polar bears and a hatch. Story 12. I would have to say no to either option. My luck is such that if I choose a woman, I would end up with a person like Roseanne Barr, and if I choose a man, I might get either a self-help guru or someone like Jared from Subway. Either way, I would find myself in a difficult situation, and I don't want that burden on my conscience. Story 13. I'm going with a woman, but I'm anxious about the wide range that the selection might include. I hope for at least an able-bodied adult. If I end up with someone completely dependent on me, like an elderly person or a child, I may not be able to manage. Story 14. Women, generally speaking, are perceived as weaker and are less likely to harm me or consume as much food. I am not exactly small, but choosing another man carries the risk of potentially losing a fight and being harmed. Story 15. Probably the woman. She requires fewer resources and is less likely to pose a physical threat if she loses her composure. Story 16. It depends. If I am definitely trapped there, I would prefer a woman. If I want a better chance of actually escaping, I would choose a man. Story 17. I want to accomplish tasks efficiently. I want less complaining and more results. When complaints arise, they should address real issues. This isn't really a question. I wouldn't choose someone solely for companionship on an island. Those who make such a choice often see the other person merely as a source of pleasure. However, what you truly need is a teammate, a worker, a hunter, or a builder, someone you can collaborate with. Story 18. Based on the survival show featuring men and women, and considering that I tend to get along better with men. Story 19. This is making me think a lot more than I expected. Initially, I thought of a woman because it could be romantic, living a life stranded away from everything. My priority is to first try to get noticed and rescued, and if that doesn't work, focus on long-term survival. Now, I think I'm leaning toward a male companion on the island. We would sleep in shifts and watch for planes or boats. Having something ready to catch fire or continuously burning would help draw attention. We would focus on water filtration and sustainable food sources as part of our long-term plan. However, if that opportunity passes, it may be better to be with a woman. She would eat less and likely be less of a threat to my safety. I think I choose a woman. Story 20. Can I pick two gay men and their partner? I don't have to be scared they would pressure me or hurt me for it. I can cook and they can lift things I can't. I will not abuse this, but I am aware that they can be hurt. I can also help them to offset any hardship. I just can't do it alone. I make our camping ground comfortable, help with food, make them clothes, tend to injuries, assist in hunting, and bring humor. Their partner can entertain them in the intimate department. I will be fine without intimacy or romantic love if I have friends. Their friendship is enough love for me, and when I seek a particular kind of affection, I can be satisfied with self-love. If they have a disagreement and need a break from each other, I can listen so they still have someone to talk to instead of depending entirely on each other for emotional support. I choose two gay men so they can support each other. I still get company, but they will be indifferent to me sexually, relieving any stress about being viewed as entertainment. There are too many variables regarding what makes a man attractive to me, making it a gamble to bring in someone random. Honestly, the odds suggest that the straight man I could be paired with will not meet the attractiveness criteria most women find appealing. I am young, a woman, not unattractive, and have a vagina. Most straight men will regard me as an option regardless of my character. With men, there is significant variation in character and looks. With the gay set, that concern is removed, and I don't have to worry about their interest in me as they are not attracted to the concept of me. I will automatically respect that fact, ensuring safety for both of us. I won't disrespect his preferences, and he won't disrespect mine. It's a win-win situation. If he comes in with another partner, that desire for intimacy, which is apparently always present in men, shifts from me to themselves. They also benefit from not getting tired of each other spiritually by having someone else to interact with without infringing on romance. They can enjoy their time while we all work on establishing a community. If we like the island and care about building a civilization, I think their viability can last for about 3 days. If we want to take the risk, we can figure out how to manage interactions in a way that feels comfortable for everyone. If they are bisexual, there is a high chance one of them will be attractive to me, which might help overcome any initial reluctance I have towards the straight partner. Additionally, his gay boyfriend is more likely to consent if he does, and I would remember to share because the gay partner may prioritize his companion. The gay partner and I can agree to share the bisexual partner to make a collective effort to create a civilization, using my nurturing qualities to benefit us all. It's not the most outlandish idea. This is how many societies have historically organized themselves. If I can't choose the gay set, I would prefer a dog or cat. I apologize for the context of this message. It was shared in the wrong space. Story 21. It's not necessarily a deserted island. There might be a small hotel or housing available. We could use a food delivery service. Is there a swimming pool? I assume there is some infrastructure. Is it tropical? Is there Wi-Fi? I think I would enjoy the company of a good woman, so I will take the risk. Story 22. A bear. It depends. I'm definitely eating the other person, so I'll choose whichever has more muscle and fat. Story 23. A man. To be honest, your average man is likely to have better survival skills than your average woman. Women can, of course, know more, but generally speaking, men tend to be exposed to these skills as children, whereas a larger portion of women are not. You could also, of course, be a man who is not skilled in survival, like myself. Story 24. I prefer to be with someone who can pull their own weight, and I wouldn't be expected to protect and provide for. Story 25. Another man. I am old. I do not have the energy or the patience for a new romantic relationship, so it would be entirely a question of utility, which means the man. Story 26. A man, unless the woman is a Marine or something, had to deal with fieldwork one time as a sailor, which we are not trained for at all. A Marine I was working with accompanied me to the NEX and helped me get everything I would need. Story 27. I would rather be stuck on an island or in the wilderness alone. Thank you very much. If there is another random person, I would prefer they stay on their side of the island. Story 28. I mean, honestly, no matter the situation, a man is going to be your best bet if you're a man. He can do more hard work, doesn't have to worry about periods in the wild, and has a generally better chance at survival skills, teamwork, and sacrifice. Even if your angle is maybe we become lovers, the best case scenario is that you create one more generation to suffer and die on the island. The more likely scenario in this lover's arc is that she dies in childbirth, taking your child with her because she's malnourished and you have no medical care. So now you're alone and depressed. In a survival situation, a man and a woman may be a less effective partnership, with a higher chance of attracting predators and danger. A man and a man can work together seamlessly and be a more effective duo, although they may experience sexual frustration if neither of them are interested. If you're a woman, your best bet for survival is also a man. It's literally what we evolved for. Story 29. They asked women if they would rather be in the forest with a man or a bear, and they simply said bear. When men were asked to decide whether another man or a woman should be stranded on an island, they often wrote lengthy analyses of parameters and conditions, expected effort, and task division. Yet women still live longer. What gives? Story 30. Both options can be dependable or unreliable depending on the circumstances. Eventually, there may be intimacy due to isolation. The real question is whether to risk pregnancy or engage in same-sex relationships. Story 31. A woman, without question. I get along better with women, and there would be a lot of conversation on an island. Story 32. If the other person and I are the only ones on the island, it is a woman. If we are on the island for an extended period, it is a woman. Story 33. I can live without sex, but I can't spend all night killing bugs and chasing tigers alone. Story 34. Stocking tub imminent caption violet plant cows ripe handle insurance. Story 35. I will say a woman simply as a gamble. If we get along, it would help my morale significantly, but she may not be able to perform the same physical work another man can do. If it's another guy, we are likely to go down that path where we end up discussing women, and that could become a serious morale issue. Story 36. Some comments here remind me that some men are gay because they like men, while others may be gay due to negative feelings towards women. Story 37. Hypothetical? That's a tough question with many possibilities. I would rather flip a coin, but if it's a matter of choosing someone, I would choose a woman. I am an introverted straight man, not an alpha, and not particularly skilled in survival, but not helpless either. Statistically, women are more inclined to ask for help and support, to engage in conversation, and to seek assistance. However, they are also statistically weaker than men. A man can be either weaker or stronger, more or less skilled, but being stronger yet unfit for survival can be frustrating. If a woman is insufferable, I would distance myself from her. For a man, that situation would be more challenging. So I choose the woman. If she wants to be alone and prefers I stay away, I will respect that. If she is annoying, I will tell her to leave. If she is somewhere in between, I will try to be nice to her while setting boundaries. If she is a great friend but weaker, I will do everything I can for us to be the best team. If she is stronger, I will follow her lead. If there is mutual affection between us, that would be wonderful. Story 38. Depends on the island. Another man may be stronger and more suited to survive due to physical advantages. If it is a paradise on Earth, a woman is more likely to thrive. Story 39. It depends on the woman. It depends on the man. Frankly, I would probably rather be eaten by sharks. Story 40. Another man. It's much easier to solve and overcome this situation without a lady nagging, crying, and complaining. Ladies can have the bear. I'll take a hardworking man with mental fortitude who doesn't shut down when things get tough. Story 41. Based on statistics, I would be safer with a random woman. The majority of violence against men is perpetrated by random men. Story 42. A woman is less likely to try to confront me aggressively when she discovers I am gay. Just because you have male genitalia does not mean I am interested in a sexual relationship with you. Story 43. Another man. If it were a woman, we might be tempted to engage in intimacy, especially as time goes on. Imagine if she became pregnant and gave birth on the island, with no one around but you and no medical help. No thanks. It is easier to have another man and avoid temptation. Story 44. Another man. It is more likely that the other person will also have some survival skills rather than complain about not having a signal. Story 45. I feel that if I were stuck on an island with a woman, I would be criticized for doing something wrong every 5 minutes, and we would quickly grow to dislike each other. As we both start to lose our sanity, she would create rumors when she talks to the clouds and birds on the island, which would spread quickly. The man and I could discuss the interesting rock we found and feel happy. Story 46. A man. It will be simpler, and any problems we have we can settle with our fists and then move on with life. There is also a low chance of them falsely claiming I harmed them when we're rescued. Story 47. I would feel less guilty if we were both struggling to survive. I don't want to let a woman down, especially if she happens to be a survivalist. I will be the best assistant. Story 48. Another man would increase my chances of survival. On the other hand, women eat less and can be taken advantage of. Story 49. Basically, naked and afraid raises an interesting question. I wonder why they never paired 2 women or 2 men together on that show. It was always a man and a woman. It wasn't about a battle of the sexes. They had to work together. Story 50. Depends. If we are stuck there forever, I would choose a woman and I would settle to repopulate. If we are given a fair chance to survive and escape or be rescued, I would choose another man. He would likely be physically stronger, improving the odds, and he would probably be a veteran or outdoorsman. Story 51. Honestly, it depends on how physically and mentally fit the other person is, what kind of specialized knowledge they may have, the existing or lack of infrastructure, and the island biodiversity. Story 52. A woman. Current propaganda aside, when faced with a crisis, A man and a woman can come to an agreement. Two women would be just a recipe for disaster. Story 53. It really depends on the individual and their skill set. If I knew nothing about the person I was paired with, I would choose a man simply because males tend to develop muscle more easily, which would benefit manual labor if we had to spend an extended time on the island. That being said, I feel a woman might be less likely to become aggressive or pose a threat to my safety, so there are arguments for both choices. Story 54. Either they are equals unless there are spiders to kill, hunters to fend off, or heavy dirty things to move. Story 55. It depends on what I am trying to accomplish. For getting intimate, I would need a woman. For survival beyond 2 weeks, I would need a man. Story 56. A man. If it is going to be a random man or woman from the entire world's population, it is more likely that the man has practical skills that could be useful in a survival situation. Story 57. Can I have pets instead? Cats or dogs? If I am stuck on an island forever, I want to be with pets, not humans. Story 58. I would rather be with a random person. The woman is likely to feel terrified just because she is with a stranger, and I don't want to deal with that. The person could potentially be cool. Story 59. Statistically speaking, a man is generally more capable of physical work and more likely to possess useful survival knowledge in this scenario. The chances of finding a woman who is genuinely valuable in this situation are extremely low, and personally, I cannot afford to consider that. If I were skilled in survival techniques, I would choose a partner for selfish reasons, knowing I can handle all the necessary tasks myself. Story 60. In real life, the man has better chances of survival and rescue with another person. If this was a hypothetical situation where you were stuck with one person forever, it would be the woman. If we like each other, we would get married and live happily ever after in paradise. Story 61. I am a man and I would appreciate the company of a woman. I also value the survival skills, strength, and work ethic of a man. Ultimately, if I feel desire, I would prefer to be with a woman. Story 62. At first, I thought a male would be preferable due to reasons like physical strength and teamwork for activities such as hunting and building. However, I believe I would rather be paired with a woman. Generally speaking, I think a male and female pair is more balanced and would promote a more peaceful environment. I believe there is a higher likelihood that two men would eventually fight to the death. Similarly, I think two women could also be prone to conflict. Story 63. Another man. At least we can try to develop a decent escape plan. The woman would only hinder progress. Story 64. This is tough. On one hand, with the woman, there is a chance of procreation, and if cannibalism occurs, there would be less fat and chewy bits. On the other hand, I could spend time doing foolish things with a man, similar to what my friends and I do. Story 65. Given that this is Reddit, every man here needs to be accompanied by another man so at least one person can take charge. Story 66. Need more information about who, where, how long, conditions, food availability, shelter availability, and other details. Story 67. A man in the short term or a woman in the long term might have different strengths. A man may be more likely to possess raw survival skills, while a woman might offer better stability in a one-to-one relationship. This perspective is completely subjective, of course. I'm not a sociologist. Story 68. Neither. I would rather be celibate and stuck on the island with a wild bear. I would feel safer than with a woman from the United States. Story 69. I will choose the older man, as he is likely knowledgeable, while the younger man can handle physical tasks. Hopefully, the man is not completely inept or unhinged. Overall, I will take my chances with a random individual. Story 70. Can I get a dog or something? If I could choose, it would be a woman, and that woman would be my wife because she is smarter than me. Story 71. I believe I would choose a woman. My knowledge and skill sets would likely overlap more with an average man, so selecting a woman broadens the range of abilities and information we can draw upon to thrive. Story 72. I would choose the person who answered this question with the fewest words or someone who is mute, so they cannot talk or nag me to death on the island. Story 73. It doesn't matter as much, in my opinion. What's more important is whether they are reliable or not. I would rather be alone than deal with a toxic person trying to sabotage everything I try to do. Story 74. Most likely a man. The chance of him bringing more survival skills is higher. I have more trust in his ability to understand the necessity of working together to survive than in a woman who may be scared of me and not want to cooperate. Story 75. Honestly, it depends on how tough the survival factors are and how long I would be stuck there. If the conditions are rough, I would prefer a strong and capable person to navigate the situation. If it feels like a vacation, I would rather spend it with a woman. It gives me more inner passion and satisfaction to bond with her in a way that is likely to become very intimate. Story 76. I believe the likelihood of either being violent towards me is low, which alleviates many concerns regarding men. I would expect their behavior to range from unhelpful to extremely supportive. A woman would have similar possibilities except for the absence. However, I would also have concerns about being faced with antagonism or demands, as if I have obligations that they define. Unlike the concerns regarding violence with men, I don't think the potential for these traits would be lessened by the situation. If I were a woman, I would have a different perspective. Story 77. I am more likely to have things in common to chat about, and there is a greater chance he shares an interest in survival, camping, and similar activities. The workload and dynamic would be easier to split as well and would probably come more naturally. The dynamic with a random woman could be challenging. Her personality might be harder to predict than that of a random man, with the possibility of someone who is constantly suspicious of my intentions and may act difficult or be unwilling to do much manual work, or could be sensitive about the distribution of workload and the work dynamic. Story 78. What did I stumble into? Plot for cannibalism. But really, I want a man for the physical strength just in case I need help with building things, hunting, and so on. Plus, I am gay, so there you go. Story 79. The man is much more likely to be useful in a survival scenario, but women can have sex. It was embarrassing to watch. Tough call. Story 80. I would choose a random woman. Women are, on average, calmer, more reasonable, and easier to get along with. The last thing I would want if stuck on an island is to be there with someone I don't get along with. Story 81. It depends. Are they random people? Regardless of gender, they could both be unpredictable and pose a threat. Alternatively, they might just complain. They could also be cooperative, allowing us to either escape the island or learn to live on it. It is not feasible to be gender-specific since both genders are capable of the same actions. Story 82. Ideally, I want a cyanide pill, but I would prefer a man. The chances that a man looked up and remembered random survival advice are higher. Thank you to whoever is reporting me for being a danger to myself. You are very funny. I want you to know I have an appointment with a psychiatrist in 2 weeks, so there is no need. Story 83. A woman is less of a threat and more likely to possess complementary skills than overlapping ones. There is potential for a sexual or romantic relationship to form. If I am stuck indefinitely, a romantic relationship is likely to be the most sustaining. Story 84. If there is no chance of escaping, I would prefer a woman. However, if we have a strong chance of survival and getting out, then I would prefer a man, as it is more likely that a man will be able to assist me with survival skills. Story 85. It entirely depends on the duration, and this is all about my own survival. If it's for a short period, like a month or two at most, it would be easier to establish safety and shelter with a man. Someone who can gather wood for shelter and fish for food. Eventually, however, the man may crack, leading to a struggle for survival. There will be no negotiating for scarce resources or food. I can see lasting longer with a woman. It will be difficult at first, trying to establish shelter and gather food, but once everything is in place, I believe we would endure longer. Women typically use fewer resources. If it were a modern woman, the nagging and complaining would likely have subsided by the end of the first month, either because she adapted or because she did not survive. Either way, I am focused on survival. I would prefer to go it alone. It won't matter too much, as I would never place my faith in someone else's hands. Story 86. If I am with a man, I will either survive and thrive or be killed and eaten. If I am with a woman, I may have good company, but I might still face the danger of being killed and eaten. Story 87. A man is fully competent. He will be more capable whether I choose to leave or stay. Do you want to build a good raft to escape? Choose the right partner. If escape is not possible and you want to create a comfortable living space, consider building a nice man cave. You can set up traps for a steady food supply and develop more infrastructure to make life easier for yourself. Choose the right partner. Story 88. I believe a man is more likely to have been a Boy Scout and know basic camping techniques, as well as hunting and construction skills. Story 89. I'm going to pick the person. I'm not going to die because we couldn't decide where to build the raft, where to sleep, or how to breathe correctly. Story 90. If survival is a challenge for a man, water, shelter, and food are vital for a woman. Story 91. Another man would be able to help build shelter, weapons, and other items. Additionally, I appreciate intimacy with men. Story 92. The man is sure she will find a way to sabotage any progress he is making because he will not treat her like a princess. Story 93. Most men would try to assault a woman anyway. They do not confront another grown man. Story 94. A man. Men are better in survival situations. Less nagging. No chance of false allegations when we leave the island. Story 95. I would prefer someone who can assist more in hunting, building shelter, making nets, and gathering wood. I feel that, on average, women are not trained in survival skills. Many men aren't either, but I will take my chances. If you want to be specific, I would choose a woman who has won or completed 30 days on a survival show like Alone, over a random man from a major city in the United States. However, such women are rare. Story 96. If the goal is to survive and eventually escape, a man. If there is no hope of escape, a woman. If there is no hope of reproducing, return to the man. Story 97. I will never forget seeing a man versus woman survival in the Wild television show. The women did nothing but complain while the men worked together and prospered. Story 98. I would prefer to work with another guy. We can at least survive or collaborate to find a way off this island. A random girl would be mostly unhelpful in that situation. Story 99. I would prefer to choose a man because I believe a woman would choose a bear over me, and I would like someone who genuinely wants me by their side. Story 100. A random person is more likely to possess wilderness survival skills, or at least have useful knowledge. Story 101. If I wanted to survive and escape from the island, I needed a man to team up with. For a long-term plan, I needed a woman to help create a new community. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.